Hi, I'm Jackie Marks from Quilter Eden in East Grand Forks, Minnesota, where we're getting ready for the Valley Shop Hop 2018. Now, I'm going to show you today how to use the ruler that you'll be using to make all of the blocks that you collect on the Shop Hop, and I'll be demonstrating the piecing of our block. This ruler is what we'll be using. It's the Creative Grids non-slip 45-degree kaleidoscope and Dresden plate ruler. So we'll be using that 45-degree mark to make some triangles to make a neat design on the block. So first, you'll need to cut some 6.5-inch squares that you then cut diagonally like this so that you have 4 triangles. We'll set those aside. And then you'll cut 2 3.5-inch strips. 1 3.5-inch strips out of one of your fabric and 1 3.5-inch strip out of the other fabric. And these are the full width of the fabric. I've already sewn these together for you so you don't have to watch me sew a 44-inch seam. And I've pressed that seam to the dark side. And this strip now measures 6.5 inches this way. And we're ready to use our ruler to cut our triangles. So I'll just position my ruler so the top edge here is even with the top edge of my fabric strip. So I have a white line here that lines up with my seam, and I have a dark line here that lines up with the bottom of my strip. If my seam allowance was perfect, you might need to adjust a little bit. So I'll go ahead and cut off the selvages here. I can't get a full triangle out of that. And I'll discard that. And then I'll come over here, and you can turn your mat if you need to. And then I have my first triangle. Now, my next triangle, I'm going to turn the ruler the other way and line up my ruler again to get a triangle that goes this way. So my triangles will be alternating with the dark fabric on the bottom or the dark fabric on the top of the fabric, of the strip. So that when we sew them together, we get this alternating pattern. So I'll just continue to cut out my triangles until I have 8. That look like this, and 4 that look like this. So now when I get ready to sew them together, I've pressed my seams to the dark side so that I can nest them together. And I push these 2 seams together, and I can feel with my fingers that they're really locked in place. And I'm going to put a pin right through the stitching. That pin stays right there in the stitching. Those seams are locked together so that when I sew this seam and I open it up, I'll have a really perfect point there. I'll go ahead and pin all of these in pairs. and I'll go ahead and sew these. I'm going to start with this side on top because this seam is pointing that way, and when my machine pushes against the seam, I want it to lock into the bottom one. And try to line those edges up a little better. And I'll wait till the last second to pull that pin out to make sure my seams match nicely. And continue sewing all the way to the end of the triangle. Okay, now I'll cut these apart. And I'll open one up. And we can see that we have a really nice intersection there because we nested those seams. So we need to press these open before we sew them together. And this seam I am going to press open instead of to one side or the other, so that I don't get too much bulk up here in the center of my quilt block. I'll show you that again. Sometimes it helps to finger press it first. And now I've sewn my pairs together properly, so I don't have to worry about sewing these together the wrong way or anything. Just lay it out, make sure it looks like you want it to look, and then we'll nest this seam. We'll pin it, and we'll sew. And now I'll start on this end and come down to my point instead of the other way around. I want to maintain this 1/4 inch seam all the way to the end of this block. I don't want to veer off. And then I'll have, when I sew this half to the next half, that 1/4 inch will disappear and I'll have a really nice point in the center. Okay, so I have my 2 half hexagon pieces, or octagon pieces, and I'm just gonna sew them down the middle here to make the full octagon. And I wanna pin this in the 3 points where I want it to match. So I'll nest this seam. And I'll nest this seam over here. And then these center seams I pressed open so I can just kind of line them up and put a pin right through the middle, right where the stitching is. You can kind of make sure that it's through the stitching on that side and it is also through the stitching on that side. So that's going to give us a nice intersection. And then I'll just sew down that edge. and I can open that up and make sure my points are nice. That center point looks great. These both look great, and I have a really nice effect. These alternating triangles and trapezoids give us some nice movement. I'm just going to press that center seam open, and then we will turn it from an octagon into a square. Just pressing this open. There is a little bit of bulk in the center, so just use some steam and do what you can to get that to lay flat. And then I kind of turn it over and I give it another steam from the other side. Okay, I'll come back over here to my cutting mat. And now I'm ready to sew these corner triangles on. And you can see that they are oversized on purpose. There's plenty of room. So just get it mostly centered. You can finger press this in half if you like to find the center, but I've got plenty of room here. I'm just gonna eyeball it. Put a pin in there, and then I'll need one of these on all 4 of my corners. If you can imagine this as a square. Okay, and then we'll just work our way all the way around and sew those triangles on. I'm probably gonna put the triangle side down because there aren't any seams in that triangle. So I'm not worried about anything flipping the wrong way when I sew over it. So I want the seams that I have facing me. Okay, now you can press these seams open if you like. I'm just gonna put it here on my pressing board like this and press these seams outward. I just find that to be a little bit easier to do when I have corner triangles. If that seam allowance on the back is really gonna bother you, you can absolutely press it open or press it to the dark. Great, now all that's left to do is to square this up. Right, all we need to do is square this up to 12.5 inches square. So I have a 12.5 inch square here, which makes it pretty easy. I want the center mark to be at my 6 1/4 mark on all sides. Okay, I've got that lined up. I can see that my triangles were plenty big enough. I'm not worried about cutting any corners off. This mat is not quite big enough, but we're gonna make it work. So I'll just slice the excess fabric off of my block. And there you have a really nice 12.5 inch block. It's really pretty in these floral fabrics and that nice fuchsia grunge. And that's all there is to it. So we hope that you like using this ruler, and we hope you'll come see us at Quilter's Eden and have a great shop hop. Thanks for watching. Bye.